Okay? So, now that we've been in church, let's talk about church, okay? So, this is what church is all about. It's us doing these things. But today, we're talking about values. We're talking about the values of the church. But not only that, we're talking about your values. And I want to kick off this morning with a simple question. What is your value? If you had to attach a price tag to your life, if you had to take yourself and say, I'm worth this or I'm worth that, what is your value? What is the value that you are? Right? So in the early 1940s, a lady named Augusta Nieland greeted her 4 sons that were off to war. Augusta was a widow. Her husband, after fighting in several wars, died of natural causes, and she sent her 4 sons, now as a widow, early 1940s, off to the Second World War. Here they are, Edward, Preston, Robert, and Frederick, or Fritz, as they call them. And these 4 guys, she sent off to war in different spaces and different ways. On the 16th of May, a couple of months later, 1944, Edward would fly his B-52 bomber, and he would over Panama be shot down, and she would get the message on the 16th of May, 1944, that Edward was missing in action, presumed dead. Now, those of you that are sharp will note that he didn't die, although they thought that he died, right? Do you see the date? Okay, so Edward made it, but they let his mother know that he is most likely dead. He was shot down. It was years later that they would only find him. 2 weeks later, the 6th of June, 1944, Robert, also known as Bob the Beast, would triumphantly die as he stood with his submachine gun fighting off the enemy while his platoon was allowed to survive and retreat. He was shooting down the enemy, and he survived. He didn't survive the moment, though his platoon did, because of his bravery. And it was 2 weeks later that his mom got a letter that her second son, Robert, had died. The very next day, the 7th of June, 1944, Preston would die on Utah Beach at the landing and the invasion of Normandy. This mom, in the space of a little more than 2 weeks, lost 3, or assumed to lose 3, of her 4 sons. At this point in time, the army decided that the risk of losing the 4th son, Fritz or Frederick, that was brought in to France. He was dropped. He was a bat, and he was dropped over France. But he missed his drop zone. And what happened now was he was lost somewhere in France. They didn't know if he was alive or whether he was dead. And what they did is, because they thought that there might be a chance that he possibly was alive, and they didn't have the nerve to take this mother a 4th letter of her last and only remaining son to go to this widow and tell her that the last of her family has died. They decided to send him home, but to send him home, they had to find him and get him out of the war in the middle of France, in the middle of the high point of the Second World War. But here's the question. Why is Fritz worth more than the soldiers that would die to go and rescue him? Why is his life worth saving? Why is his value more now that his brothers has died? Why did they look at him and say, well, this guy is worth others dying for? In fact, why was anybody's life worth so little to be sent into war? What is the value of a human being? What is the value of life? What is the value of your life? And what gets to determine that? Years later, they will make a movie. In 1998, they made a movie called Saving Private Ryan. They changed some names, they took some license, but ultimately they based it upon this particular story. The movie starts off with this gripping scene of Private Ryan, or Fritz Nieland, in an older estate, years later at home, walking to the grave and falling down in front of the grave of one of the soldiers that had died in an effort to come and rescue him. And as his wife and his family tries and console him, he makes the statement, he says, "Tell me that I've lived a good life. Tell me that I've lived a good life. Tell me that I've lived a life worthy. Tell me that I've lived a life worthy of the price that was paid." Price determines value. In your case, the same is true. The value of your life is determined by the price that was paid for you, is determined by the price that is paid for your life. You see, 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 20 says that we have been bought at a high price. You have a high value because your life has been bought at a high price. Your life has been paid for at a high price. The Amplified Bible paraphrases the same verse, and it says, "You were bought with a price, purchased with a preciousness and paid for, made His own." God has paid a precious high price for our lives, and this price determines our value. Now, those of you that know me well knows that I'm a little bit of a Jew. I love negotiating things. I love quibbling about things. To my wife's great dismay sometimes. Some time ago, I was sitting down with a second-hand car salesman, and he was trying to sell me a car. And towards the end of the transaction, he looked at me and he said, he had to send me off to the financing department. He was done with me. And he looked at me and he said, "I'm going to send you over to this guy over there so that you can further, take some money from him." And I said, "What do you mean? I'm paying you." He says, "No, you're not paying me. We're losing on this deal." And I'm like, what's up with that? But I just couldn't fathom paying the price they put on the car. That's the beginning of the negotiation, isn't that right? At least that's how it works in Africa, is whatever price there is. I mean, the reality is you're supposed to quibble about the price. Nobody pays the price that's on the ticket. Fact of the matter is, I love this. I love quibbling about prices. I remember whenever we would take people to Africa, and I have the privilege of touring with people in Africa, you'd find these little craft stalls where they pay things. Now, if they hear you speak with a foreign language or you're from another nation, they love to just make you these prices that are nice New York prices for things, okay? But it's not human prices. So I'm traveling with New Yorkers, and I quibble with these guys to bring the price down to, because they started about a year's labor, a year's salary for an artifact, and then you argue them down. And once I get a real good price, I normally tell the guys, just pay them what they asked initially. This was fun, Because the fact of the matter is, you appreciate them, but it's the fun of arguing the price. It's the fun of getting a good price. I was a small little 5 or 6 year old, and my mom went to have an afternoon nap one afternoon, Sunday afternoon, and I was bored. So I decided to start a business that afternoon. And the business that I was starting is I took my mom had a vegetable garden where she was growing vegetables. And I decided that most of these vegetables are either ripe or, they'll get ripe eventually. So I took everything that I could find, put it in my little cart, and I went down from neighbor's house to neighbor's house to neighbor's house selling the vegetables. I got 5 cents for all of my mom's vegetables. I thought it was a good deal. My mom, for some reason, wasn't too happy about it when she woke up to no vegetable garden whatsoever. And she kind of started saying at that point in time, she would say that Jurie would have sold me if only he could have find a buyer for me. But I loved selling things. Now, I look at this deal. God bought me with a high price. I kind of feel it's a little unfair. Because here's the thing. If the price He paid for me was Jesus Christ, I kind of think He could have gotten me a lot cheaper. And maybe you might argue, and maybe you think I'm a good guy, but the fact of the matter is, if I think through humanity, there's some guys that I feel like that high price is a little too high. Maybe in my best state, when on my best moments, I could have been worth something. But most of the time, I'm worth very, very little in my sinful, broken state. And with all the mistakes I've made and all the things I've done, I don't know about you, but I would have thought that God would have argued a little bit about the price. I would have thought that God would have at least tried to get mankind a little cheaper. They are pretty messed up. And yet he chooses to pay a very, very high price. When you're buying something, you're weighing up the value or the worth of something versus the price paid. So on the one hand, you have sinful, broken humanity, hurting people, breaking, stealing, killing, destroying, falling short, never quite making it, messing up themselves and one another. That's what we've got on the one hand. On the other hand, we've got the price that is being paid. We've got Jesus the Christ, the Son of God, the author of the universe, the Word that was with God, the creator of heaven and earth. This CV goes on to say under education, he knows everything that there is to know. Special skills. Walking on water. Hobbies, multiplying McDonald's. This is impressive, guys. And yet God comes and he says, this is the price that I want to pay for that. Paying a price is making a value statement. God did not only pay the price that was due, but God paid a price to make a point. He paid a price to make a point over your life. Romans chapter 5 and verse 6 to 8 describes this well. It says, while we were still weak, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. For one will scarcely die for a righteous person, though perhaps for a good person one would dare to even die. But God shows his love for us in that while we were sinners, Christ died for us. God did not just pay the price due, but more than that, he paid a price that was making a point about who you are. This price speaks about your value. This price speaks about the value that he sees over your life. And maybe you're sitting here listening to me today and you've forgotten about the value that God places on you. Maybe you are undervaluing yourself. Maybe you are selling yourself short. Maybe you are looking at who you were, what you have done, what you have earned, what you've been able to gather, and you're putting a value statement over yourself together based on those things, and you're forgetting the fact that he values you at a high price. Because here's the thing. If we've answered the question, what is my value? The next question becomes, what do I value? Because once you've determined your own value, only then can you start asking the question about the things that you value in life. Because here's the principle. The principle is what gives us value determines what we value. What gives us value determines what we value. Let me explain to you. If I see my value in the things that I have, if I'm valuable, if I have a certain bank balance in the bank, or I drive a certain car, or I feel valuable if I live in a particular house, or I own a particular thing, then if I feel that those things make me valuable, if my net worth is the value statement of my life, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to value the thing that's going to value me. I'm going to be looking for the return on investment of my own value. If my own value is found in how many people like me, how I look, how good the selfies look that I take, if that's all that it's about, guess what? I'm going to value things that's going to make me look good. I'm going to invest in relationships that's going to make me look good, because what I see my value to be is what I value in life. So before we speak about what we value in life, we've got to figure out what is it that brings value to my life. What is it that makes me valuable? Because that is what I value. If I feel valued when I have power, when I have authority, when I have sway over people, when I've climbed the corporate ladder and I have people under me, if that is what makes me feel valuable, what I would value are those things. See, once you figure this out, it's very interesting to watch the news. Because you will continually hearing people making decisions based on what they value, because what they value is what makes them feel valuable. And if you start filtering conversations through this conversation, then you'll suddenly learn a lot about people. People's value reflect what gives them value. It is simply a statement of the investment that I want to make is in the area that I want to reap, because these things make me feel valuable. What brings value to you, that is what you will value in life. It's a simple ROI. It's simple return on investment. You're investing in the areas that you're looking for a return on. And so much of this world is a zero-sum game. If you've been around for a while, you would know this. You would have figured this out. What's a zero-sum game? Well, a zero-sum game is essentially when whatever is gained or won by the one is lost by another. That's a zero-sum game. So zero-sum transactions is you're going to lose this and I'm going to gain this. Or I'm going to lose this and you're going to gain that. And a lot of life is that. But true winning takes place when it's a non-zero-sum game. And that's when we move into the realm of win-win. When we find that space where we say, no, hold on, this is both parties winning. God doesn't have to take from one to bless another. Karen mentioned this at the end of the word she shared today. She said, we don't feel as if I've lost because God has spoken directly with someone else. No, what happens is it edifies me. God wasn't even speaking to me directly, but I sense the Spirit. I sense what God is doing. And I'm going, hold on, this is God. He's touching one, and when He touches one, He touches all. When He's aware of one, He's aware of all. God doesn't have to take from one to bless another. You don't need to step on somebody to feel better about yourself. But in a zero-sum world, you've got to push someone down to get up that ladder. I don't have to break anybody down like Wagner to build up my self-esteem. It's your day, buddy. Your day's your day. I don't have to break one down to look better myself. I don't have to do anything to anybody to increase my value. God is not a zero-sum God. He doesn't take something and turn it into creation. He creates creation out of nothing. God takes nothing and He makes it something. He takes a rib and He brings us a woman. That was a good place. Come on. He gives more than what He takes. He takes ground and He brings forth plants. He takes water and He brings forth fish. God takes little things and He brings forth more. He takes darkness and He brings about light. He takes water and He gives us wine. That was a dangerous place to say amen right there. I set you up for that one. JP almost got saved in that moment just there. I saw it. He takes 5 loaves and 2 fish and He turns it into 5,000 meals. Talk about non-zero sum. God takes a little and He makes it a lot. He takes 12 church leaders and He turns it into 2 billion believers. That's what God does. He's not a zero-sum God. And that's what He means in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 14 to 15, where it says, for the love of Christ compels us, because we judge thus, that if one died for all, then all died. If one did it, one sacrifice was enough to pay the price for all of us, then it changes all of us. And He died for all, verse 15, that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but for Him who died for them and rose again. Now, you might have missed it, but this was it, by the way. This was the moment, okay? Here's the moment. If we value that which gives us value, then the fact that He died for us He gave us value. And if God is not a zero-sum God, but God said, listen, I don't need to take to give, but I can multiply to what I want, then His death once and for all means that we no longer need to live for ourselves, but we have so much value that our value has become His value, and our entire lives is simply an extension of the price that He paid. That's it. That's what we value. And that is the value of you. It isn't finite. It's infinite. Because He is infinite. There isn't too little love to go around because His love has no bounds. It has no end. And if we understand this, it changes the way we live. It changes the things we value. It changes the things we live for. We can no longer just live for ourselves, our power, our glory, our bottom line. All those things are nothing compared to the value that He has placed upon our lives. It has to change our value system. We have to go through this life valuing different things than people who think that things can add value to themselves. Our value is in the price that He has attached to us, and in that moment He has bought all of us, everything that we value. We cannot live lives that's all about our comfort. I've noticed that the generation growing up is far less concerned about their bottom line. I don't know if you've noticed. But there's all kinds of research coming out. It's about a millennial generation that doesn't care about how much money they have in the bank. They don't see value in a bottom line, but they see value in the level of comfort that they can experience in this life. It's not about how much money they have. It's about how comfortable they live. And I think the age and the trend of this globe is thinking that success is working as little as possible while having a decent life. Success is doing as little effort as possible and getting the most outcome. And success is really just about me having fun. The more fun I can have, the more experiences I can have, the more valuable I am. Well, I want to tell you there's a higher level of living. There's a higher standard to success than being comfortable or not having to work 5 days a week. See, when we understand why we are valuable because He says we're valuable. It changes what we value as individuals. But it also changes what we value as a church. So if we take these value statements, then it goes from what you value to what we value. So it's not only what you value individually, but this is what we value as a church. Now, what we value as a church is not determined by something out there. It's determined by God's standards. And I know, guys, values are difficult. It's tricky. I'm so aware of the fact that values are so transactional. We continually weighing up value. Is my time more valuable, or is this task more valuable? Is it seeing this friend more valuable, or is time for myself more valuable? Is my money in the bank more valuable, or is this thing that I want more valuable? We're valuing up things all the time, and essentially as all these different little value transactions come together, these transactions takes up every moment of life, because every moment of life is a moment we're spending on one thing over the other, and it makes up our entire lives. What you value in life will determine whatever you do in life. And whether you have a little value statement with 5 words or how you try and figure this out, that's up to you, and probably has a lot to do with your personality. But this is complicated. Values are dynamic. It's not static. And I wish I could tell you that for 512 City Church, we have these 5 values or these 3 values, and we could all write them down, and it was that easy. I'm thinking about this thing, and I'm reminded of a story about a little girl that had 2 bright red ripe apples. And this little girl has these 2 apples, and her mom sees her running out of the kitchen with these 2 apples in her hands. And the mom looks at the little girl and says, wow, can I have one of the apples? Thinking that 2 is maybe a little much for this little girl, but you know how it is. She saw 2 ripe, ready apples, and, why just take one, right? So she's got both in her hands and she's running out on her way out. And her mom stops her and she kind of has, I'm caught out a little bit. And the mom says, can I have one of the apples? The little girl looks up at her mom. She looks at her apples. She looks at her mom. She looks at her apples. The next moment she takes a bite out of the one and she takes a bite out of the other one. And she looks at her mom. And you can see this mom is like, oh, you didn't just do that. And the little girl holds out the one apple to her mom. The mom kind of pauses. The little girl says, I just wanted to taste which one was the sweetest. This is it. You have it. Values are a little fickle, isn't it? Because we might have said that this young girl was violating the value of sharing when she was taking a bite out of each apple, but she was certainly honoring the value of giving your best to others. Values are sometimes hard to define. And at 512 City Church, we don't take that for granted one bit. So we didn't come up with a list. We didn't say that these are our values. We'll figure out our values as we go. But we know this, that our value as individuals and our values as a church is determined by the value that He places on us. And may our values always reflect whatever places the value that He places on every other person out there. May our values reflect that. So rather than coming up with a list of words or a couple concepts or ideas, we came up with a couple of paragraphs. Some of you would know this. There's a copy of this on your chair. It's called our creed, right? So this creed is essentially the statement. This is a dream statement. This is a desire statement that we say, rather than trying to say that we value this, that, or the other, these concepts are taken up in this, which is birthed and brought out of our vision, right? It says, we dream that people in Austin will tell stories of Jesus changing lives through them. Does that sound familiar? Just say yes, it'll make me feel better. Okay, fantastic. Okay, we dream that people in Austin will tell stories of Jesus changing lives through them. We take Jesus seriously, living His words, speaking the truth. We revere the Holy Spirit, listening attentively, embracing the gifts and bearing fruit. We believe God, keeping it real. Okay? Does that sound like us? Do you guys see how the values are put in there? Right? So we value Jesus. We value the truth of the Bible. We value the gifts of the Holy Spirit. We place a value on the work of God. We place a value on every believer participating and being used by God and experiencing the Holy Spirit and bringing those gifts to the church, but also bringing that church to business and bringing that church to the marketplace and bringing that church, that spirit and that work of God into every facet of their lives. Second paragraph, we are family, loving uniquely, encouraging integriously, forgiving gracefully. We serve sincerely, developing our gifts and saying thank you. We appreciate people. We say thank you. We share life, saying hello. We greet people, we embrace people, enjoying children and the wise equally, drinking good coffee and laughing out loud. Now, I know this coffee one is a little bit contentious because some of you would rather be in the Jesus turning water into coffee debate. It's okay, we can have that conversation. But the fact of the matter is, the point here isn't the coffee. The point here is what we do around the coffee. Is we share life with one another. We do it together. And if you have another beverage that you want to suggest to share life around, be my guest. The value isn't the drink. The value is the person that has been bought at a high price on the other side of that cup. That's what it's about. And we are about that. Last paragraph. We use every possible opportunity to have conversations about faith in Jesus, trusting God to display His nearness through us. We take responsibility for our city. We work diligently, doing business ethically, all the while knowing who we really work for. We gather with purpose, praying together and giving generously. We welcome everyone in making this dream a reality. Now, I don't know if that constitutes a value statement, but I hope that you pick up a little bit of our heart. I hope that this makes sense for you as you read this. I hope your heart goes and you go, I've been tasting this. But more than that, that your heart would go and say, I haven't just been tasting that. I want to be that. I want to be a part of that. Remember, as the church, we are simply an expression of His value statement. We are the price tag that God wants to come and place on the city. We are the price tag that needs to speak value to people who feel valueless. We are the ones that are called to portray that value, to display that value, to be His arms and His feet to people out there. I love the shadows or the pictures that set up in the Old Testament of what God would do in the New Testament. But one of these shadows is when He institutes the priests in the book of Numbers. God comes and He gives them this blessing. And maybe you've heard this blessing before in your life, but God gives the priest this blessing in Numbers chapter 6, verse 23 to 27. Speak to Aaron and his sons, the priests, saying, this is the way you shall bless the children of Israel. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. So they shall put my name on the children of Israel, and I will bless them. See, the picture here is that God had a people, and the Bible will teach us in 1 Peter that we are now the royal priesthood. We are the people of God. We are now this nation of God that displays Him to the world. That's who we've become. And when He says this, He says, the Lord makes His face shine upon you. And I love that phrase, but if you look at the original Hebrew here, when it says, make His face shine upon you, the wording that is used is the word paunim. Now, paunim is the Hebrew word that is used to make or kindle a fire. And the idea here is both the act of bringing together the different pieces that will become the wood and the hay and the different things that will become the fire, and the idea of kindling that fire or blowing your breath upon it so that it ignites, so that it shines. When it says, may the Lord make His face shine upon you. Have you ever blown on an amber and see how the oxygen causes it to take light and to shine? The image here is of God bringing us together and blowing on us and paniming us. He's making His face shine upon us. He's causing us to glow. He's causing us to shine. He's causing us to display His value system to a world that has lost its value because it values things that are worthless. He comes and He blows Himself over us. He comes and He makes us shine. He makes us be His gift to this world. One paraphrase takes the same verses and it rewrites it as follows, the Message paraphrase. It says, tell Aaron and his sons that this is how you are to bless the people of Israel. Say to them, God bless you and keep you. God smile on you and gift you. God wants to make a gift of you. He wants to make a gift of you where you are paying a high price for others as a high price has been paid for you. May our value system as a church depict and display His value system over us. May we be a reflection of that. May He kindle us together into that. May we be His gift to this community. In closing, I want to show you a picture. It's a picture of a painting. Now, it's a nice painting, but I want you for a moment to consider what that painting cost to make. It's the canvas, it's a little bit of paint, it's maybe a couple of brushes, and that's what it took to make that painting, and a couple of hours of somebody's time brought that together. This particular painting, this painting is called the Salvator Mundi, and the Salvator Mundi was sold in the year. It was sold in the year 2005 for $10,000. Now, I know you're looking at that and you're thinking, $10,000? Really? $10,000. Well, it was believed at the time that this painting was done by Giovanni Antonio Boltraffio, okay? And Antonio Boltraffio was an understudy of a guy whose name you might know a little better, called Leonardo da Vinci. And when they restored this painting, they found out that somebody tried to restore it and paint over it. And actually, at the bottom of it, there was an inscription by Leonardo da Vinci. This painting that was bought for $10,000 in the year 2005 was sold last November the 15th, 2017, for an amount of $450 million US. If you were paying attention, that's 45,000% return on investment, okay? Somebody made some money. What made the difference? It's the same oil, it's the same canvas, same strokes. It looked a little different, but pretty much the same. It didn't look 45,000% better. What made the difference was whose name was on it. What makes the difference to the value we place on ourselves is whose name we put on it. Because I've been bought by a high price. The master of the universe, the creator of all things, God himself in human form, has paid a price for me. Not only has he paid a price for me to establish my value, he is my creator. He put these brush strokes together. He took the dust and formed it into me. He paid the best possible price. Not the cheapest, but the best. So that he could put a value statement on my life. And now, because of that, I put a value statement on the lives of others. And Mark chapter 10, verse 45, and I close with this, says that, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many." Christ came to give his life as a ransom for many. Christ came to sacrifice himself. And would you allow him to serve you? It's interesting, this verse starts off and it says, "The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve." He did not come to be paid. He did not come to be glorified. He did not come for us to ascribe value to him. No, the Son of Man came so that he might ascribe value to us. And maybe you're in a space this morning where you're saying, you know what, Jurie, I've lost my value. I've messed up too much. I haven't achieved it. Life hasn't turned out like I hoped. I've done so many things wrong that where I'm at right now, I don't feel valuable. I don't feel worth much. It might all look good, Jurie, but if you had a look under the hood, you will see that there is more debt than assets in this life of mine. I'm not worth that much. Jurie, if maybe you heard what I was thinking and what I was saying, you would doubt my value. If you could see what happens behind closed doors in my life, you wouldn't think me valuable. Well, here's the point. In that space, he came not to be served by your value, but to serve you with his value. And you have an opportunity today to allow him to ascribe value to you, to allow him to come and restore value to you. Not only does he want to come and restore value to you, he wants to come and restore value through you. He wants to use you to rethink your value system. And maybe it's drifted. Has anybody else seen that happen in your life? That your value system will drift over time, and suddenly you find yourself valuing things that you never valued before, and you're asking, how did that happen? Today is a moment where we get to allow God to come and interject and just rethink our values once rethink what it is that we value in life, and does it line up with the value that He places on you? The things that you spend your time, money, energy on, is it valuable enough for the price that has been paid